They say your life flashes before your eyes when you fall. It doesn't. There's just a deafening roar of wind, the terrifying scream of tearing metal, and then nothing. I woke up hanging upside down. The seatbelt of the Cessna was biting into my shoulder so hard I thought the bone was cracked. Blood was dripping from my forehead, falling upward onto the shattered glass of the cockpit window. I unbuckled the harness. I fell hard against the ceiling of the inverted plane. I kicked open the jammed door and crawled out into the dirt. When I finally stood up, my legs shaking, I realized the true horror of my situation. I wasn't just lost, I was swallowed. The forest was massive. Ancient pine trees towering 100 feet into the air, their thick canopies woven together so tightly that the midday sun was reduced to a dim, gloomy twilight on the forest floor. The air was heavy, smelling of damp earth, rotting wood, and crushed pine needles. I looked at the crumpled remains of the plane. The radio was smashed. The pilot was gone, thrown somewhere in the descent. It was just me. The silence of the deep woods is not a peaceful silence. It is heavy. It presses against your eardrums. It is the silence of a predator waiting for you to make a mistake. I had no food, no map, just the clothes on my back and a pocket knife. I took a deep breath of the damp air, picked a direction that sloped downward, and started walking. By the third hour, the shock began to wear off, replaced by a much older, much more primal sensation. People think of the forest as a place of abundance. It's a green desert. The thick underbrush tears at my clothes. Every step requires lifting my boots over massive, moss-covered logs and tangled roots. The physical exertion is draining the moisture from my body faster than I can comprehend. My mouth feels like it's packed with cotton. My tongue is swelling. I know the rule of threes. You can survive 3 weeks without food, but only 3 days without water. Out here, sweating like this, struggling through the dense ferns, I might not even have 3 days. I stop walking. I close my eyes and force myself to listen. Past the rustling of the leaves in the wind, past the sound of my own heartbeat pounding in my ears. I listen for the geography of the woods. Water always flows to the lowest point. I adjust my course, heading deeper into a ravine. The terrain gets steeper. I slip on the damp moss, sliding on my back, tearing my hands on the sharp rocks. I don't care about the cuts. I keep moving down, down into the shadows. And then I hear it, a faint, musical, trickling sound. I break into a clumsy, desperate run. I push through a thick wall of bushes, and there it is, a small, clear stream cutting through the gray stones. I drop to my knees in the mud. I cup my shaking hands and plunge them into the freezing water. I bring it to my face and drink. It tastes like dirt, minerals, and life. I drink until my stomach aches, washing the blood and sweat from my face. I have water. I bought myself time. The victory of finding water is short-lived. I notice the shadows stretching. The dim twilight of the forest is rapidly turning to black. Night falls in the deep woods faster than anywhere else on Earth. The canopy simply swallows the remaining light. I realize, with a sudden spike of panic, that I cannot sleep on the open ground. This is bear country, cougar country. Being on the ground in the dark is an invitation to be hunted. I have to build a shelter, and I have less than an hour of visibility left. My hands are blistered and raw. I use my pocket knife to cut down thin saplings, dragging them to the base of a massive oak tree. I lean the branches against the trunk, creating a crude, slanted frame. My muscles scream in protest, but fear is a fantastic motivator. I gather massive armfuls of dead leaves, pine boughs, and moss, piling them over the wooden frame to block the wind. I crawl inside the tiny claustrophobic space. It smells like dirt and desperation. And then the light dies completely. The darkness is absolute. It is a physical weight pressing against my eyes. I can't even see my own hand inches from my face. And the forest comes alive. The silence is replaced by a terrifying symphony. Twigs snapping under heavy footfalls just 20 yards away. Low, guttural grunts, the shrieking of an owl. Every time the wind moves the branches, it sounds like someone whispering right outside my shelter. I pull my knees to my chest. I grip my tiny pocket knife so hard my knuckles ache. I don't sleep. I just wait for the sun. I pray for the sun. I survived the night, but the cold settled deep into my bones. The morning mist is thick and freezing. If I spend another night in the dark, the hypothermia will take me before any predator does. I need a fire. I spend the entire morning gathering tinder, dry pine needles from beneath the thickest trees, strips of paper-thin birch bark, dead, brittle twigs that snap like glass. I don't have matches. I don't have a lighter. I find a piece of dry cedar and a harder stick. I carve a small notch in the cedar. I kneel in the dirt, placing the stick into the notch, and I begin to rub it between my palms. It's agonizing work. My hands are already torn. The friction burns my palms. Minutes pass. 5 minutes. 10 minutes. My shoulders feel like they are tearing apart. Sweat drips from my nose onto the wood. Come on, I whisper to myself, my voice cracking. Come on, please. My hands are bleeding. I want to stop. Every muscle in my body is begging me to stop. But then I smell it. Smoke. A tiny, fragile wisp of gray smoke rising from the blackened dust in the notch. I carefully dump the ember into my nest of birch bark. I cup it in my hands gently, like it's the most valuable thing in the universe. I blow on it, slowly, softly. The smoke thickens. The heat grows against my palms. And then a bright, beautiful orange flame bursts to life. I drop the burning bark onto the pile of dry twigs. The fire catches, crackling and popping, pushing the freezing mist away. I hold my bleeding hands toward the heat, and I laugh. A dry, ragged, crazy laugh. I made fire. I am not prey. I am a survivor. The fire kept me alive through the second night. It gave me the strength to think clearly. The rule of the wild is simple. Follow the water. The small stream I found feeds a bigger creek. The creek feeds a river. Rivers lead to people. For 2 more days, I walked along the muddy banks. I ate bitter dandelion roots and a handful of berries I hoped weren't poisonous. I became a ghost in the woods, moving silently, focused entirely on the rushing sound of the water. On the afternoon of the 4th day, the trees began to thin out. The canopy broke, and the blinding, beautiful sunlight hit my face. The stream poured into a massive, wide river. And there, sitting perfectly still on the opposite bank, was a dirt logging road. I collapsed into the shallow water, laughing and crying at the same time. The water washed over my boots, cleaning the dirt and dried blood from my hands. I heard the distant mechanical groan of a diesel engine coming down the road, an 18-wheeler loaded with timber. I stood up, waving my arms frantically, screaming until my voice gave out. The truck hit its air brakes, hissing to a stop. The driver stepped out, looking at me like I was a ghost, returning from the dead. The forest didn't care if I lived or died. It wasn't evil, it was just indifferent. It is a green silence that will outlast us all. But I survived. I walked out of the dark, and I will never take the light for granted again.